Hello and welcome to Heartrepreneur TV Live. I turned all of those dings off. What the heck? Anyways, we are live, and today we have a wonderful guest to speak with you today and share some fantastic information. Denise Richards is a lifelong entrepreneur with more than 40 years in the professional services industry. She is a certified professional coach and Energy Leadership Index master practitioner. Denise helps women real estate agents grow their business with her proprietary program, the Real Estate Sales Success Alliance. And today we are talking about using engaged energy for a life of greater satisfaction. And whether you're in real estate or not, this is going to have valuable information for you. So welcome to the call, Denise.
Well, thank you, Velma. And I'm going to call you out on something right away because yesterday you and I had a conversation that I said, I think I'll go with 4 decades in customer service or in service related businesses because it sounded younger. And you just said 40 years. So there you go. But anyway, I am still highly engaged to be here. And I love the energy that Velma always brings to her wonderful interviews. And let me tell you, I am a heartrepreneur. I am a member of the group where this is being aired. And so I've gotten to know many of you, and I know that so many of you are entrepreneurs. So I promise you, this is really geared to the mindset of entrepreneurs. And engaged energy is really all about the energy that we bring to a task or a set of circumstances that we face. So there are going to be times I mention in real estate for some examples, but really and truthfully, it's really us as entrepreneurs too. And even a lot of it that we could recognize in our own personal lives. So, our engaged energy, why is that important? Because number one, it impacts our level of performance. If we are not engaged fully with what we're doing, our performance level just isn't going to be there. And number two, that's what attributes to the joy in life and the life satisfaction. When we are able to put ourselves into situations by making great choices, that we are in both our zone of genius, and I'll thank Gay Hendricks for that wonderful book, but we are also with engaged energy. So our performance level is going to be better and our satisfaction is going to be a lot better. So I do want to say, though, that there are 7 elements that can impact our level of engagement. So I'm going to create a hypothetical situation, also referring to the zone of genius. So you could be doing a task or facing a task that you are in your zone of genius, but one of these 7 areas of your life could either enhance that satisfaction level, or it could detract from it. And it really has to do with these influencers that are also considered stressors. And those 7 are spirituality. It could be physical. So it could be your health. It could be mental. It could be environmental. I'm going to look at my list because my mind just went blank. Social. I mean, my goodness, talk about what our social impact right now. Are we not all just so socially impacted? Even though we are more connected than ever, there's the upside. We are more connected than ever through this technology. And then when you see the rants and the raves, the downside is we are so connected and that we have a hard time disconnecting. So it sets off the triggers, right? And it can impact our energy levels and therefore our performance and our engagement. Also, it determines a little bit of our level of commitment. Now, there are things in our communication that there are 4 things. And then, Velma, I'm going to ask you to think of a time when you could see yourself in this. But there are 4 statements that we make that kind of are clues for our energy engagement. And I'm going to ask you and recommend you to kind of become an observer of your own thoughts, an observer of your behavior, your reactions, your triggers, your responses, and then an observer of the things that you say. Human beings are the only species who can actually think about how we think.
Yes.
Right. What a gift. What a tremendous gift. So when you can kind of take a step back and become an observer, you can recognize things and therefore maybe reframe, switch your point of view on it, but also recognize when are the situations that you find yourself being triggered. So the 4 comments that are dead giveaways to our level of engagement with our energy are the words, I won't, I have to, I should, and I choose to.
Okay.
So,
So
Val,
I want to interrupt you. I want to have a couple of questions because you've been sharing a lot of really great information. Okay.
okay.
So your 4 statement clues of your energy engagement, like I spotted what you've got in there almost immediately. And yes, I've said each and every one of these. Each and every one of these, I won't, because that's just a stop your energy, right? I have to. That is definitely a victim mentality that I'm hearing with that one,
Mhm.
and I have used that one. I've used that one frequently recently, so I will own that. And I should. I love the statement: "Stop shoulding on yourself." And I choose to, and this is one of my favorites of what you're sharing here, is I choose to, because that brings the power back into me. So am I hearing these correctly in how you're relating them to your energy engagement?
Absolutely, because the I choose to, I mean, it's right there in the words. We are living at choice. We are in
Mhm.
control of the situation.
Yes.
It's usually also regarding a task or a set of circumstances where we could be in our zone of genius or our zone of excellence. So it's something we enjoy, we're good at it, and the time just flies by. So
Mhm.
there is really, other than to acknowledge and be happy that we have those moments, there's no corrections to be made here. Just run with that. So the 3 things that we're going to take a deeper look at is, what are we doing to ourselves with the I won'ts, the I shoulds, and the I have to's.
Absolutely. And I can see too, as you've been speaking, how each of these 4 statements for our energy engagement really do fall into each of those categories, the spiritual, physical, mental, environmental, social. How many times have we I should when it comes to a social engagement? Rather than following rather than I choose to, it's an I should. I know that's something that I've encountered a number of times. And same with, even with physical, right? You talked about physical and our health. I have to, I should, even I won't eat that diet. No, I'm not going to do that. I want to eat my ice cream. Right? And instead of coming in from that space of choose to. So I totally see how each of those layers onto some of those original categories that you were talking about.
Yes, and let's begin with I won't. Like that's
Mhm.
the lowest level of commitment, right? And level of energy, or committed energy. But I won't can be a very good thing. Sometimes that is like yes, and you shouldn't, right? But I won't, if you step outside of that and say, okay, where's my resistance? Is there something that could be to my benefit or my growth? And I think of it as like with real estate agents, I was around when internet leads and things like that
Mhm.
first really started taking off. And there were a lot of veteran agents, like, oh, no, I am not going to do a Facebook page. I am not going to do digital marketing. And then it gradually became I should. Now, the I
Mm.
won'ts and the I shoulds have one thing in common. They are really still both optional. Like nobody's going to call you out on it and say, oh, you don't have a social media page when you are
Mhm.
an entrepreneur. But you could be doing the I shoulds to yourself. So, but if it's not your zone of genius, clearly that's something that you are going to delegate,
Right.
and find the person who can really do this for you. And so do you see that correlation with the I won'ts and the I shoulds, that as far as to our level of success, we consider them to be optional?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the I won'ts, I mean, you mentioned about sometimes how saying no is of value, but I would layer that into the I choose to, because I'm choosing no. It's not a I refuse no, it's an I choose no, right? So I do see that. I do see um the shoulds is kind of like the graduating up, right? Like I moved from I won't to, well, I probably should, right? So it's just like a tiny bit more energy. Um, and then I can see that even layering up to, well, I have to because it's the right thing to do, kind of thing. And then finally getting into that I choose to, because I kind of I almost see like those are steps up to I choose to.
Yes, and then certainly the quicker we can get to I choose to, the better, right? Because again, it's a sense of satisfaction.
Mhm.
Now, I love the way you tie that I won't to I choose to, because I choose not to, rather.
Mhm.
And so it is still your option, and you can choose not to. It has a healthier type of an energy,
Right.
because I'm going to dive now to the have tos.
Mm.
The have to is really a situation where you really have no choice, or else something bad could happen. Now, I'm going to use myself as an example, um, and that every year at this time, when all of those little end of the year statements start coming in and
Mhm.
saying, okay, the tax time is right around the corner. Well, getting everything ready to send to a CPA is certainly in my zone of competence, but I have zero interest. I have no desire to do this.
Mhm.
And the bad thing about the have tos is that's where a lot of resentment could get stored. Now, I'm not one of these activists that, oh, I resent the government because I have to pay taxes. No, I believe that we pay our fair share of taxes. But you could think of a scenario where someone is put into a have to for a job, or a have to
Mhm.
in order to keep a client happy. Um, and yet it still like either grates against you. Well, one of the influencers that I always look back to, or look to, because when we think of the spiritual influencer, this is where our sense of purpose lives, and it's where our values live. So if you are faced with a have to and it doesn't align with your purpose, that one you can usually find a workaround. And we know of entrepreneurs who, okay, they're doing their purpose and passion-filled work as their
Mhm.
side gig, and they're doing a different job that doesn't fill their passion, because it also makes sense at the time to, or for the time being, for their family obligations and financial obligations, they are choosing that they will remain in that full-time gig for a while. But when it comes to our values, if we are faced with something that works against our values and it's also a have to, oh my goodness, talk about put on the brakes, just, drag,
Mhm.
screaming and everything. And if you are constantly allowing yourself, letting yourself, or committing to being put into situations where it goes against your values, I say it causes the dis-ease and therefore leads to disease, because our values shouldn't be flexed around. Like, we don't want to reframe our values. The values are our core. Those are kind of like steadfast. Now, can we look at our values? And this is in my opinion. Can we look at our values and say, okay, why do I have that value? Is that really that important to me? Because I've had a shift on something recently that I was like, okay, yes, I can develop a tolerance in this situation because I can see the reason why that this needs to go this way. But if it comes to something being deceitful, and unfortunately, real estate agents sometimes deal with homeowners that hide physical issues with the home,
Yep.
like they're hiding something, and then the agent can discover it and they have to disclose to all parties that there's a hidden problem with this home. And then in the meantime, they're actually legally and contractually representing this seller. So you have these issues that you could be in a situation where you're going to take an action that actually hurts your client. And the tug of war, the inner tug of war, and the division of responsibilities, and where is your loyalty to, well, it still goes to what's the law, what is legal, and that your values are hopefully anchored to that. So you have to suddenly becomes, I have to do this and it's going to hurt someone.
I really hear what you're saying on that, and I think what I'm hearing is that even though we are going to experience the I won'ts, the I have tos, the I shoulds, um, we are still choosing. So I'm choosing to stay within my values. So
Yes.
even though I have to do this in order to stay inside my values, I'm choosing my values, right? So I definitely see how choosing um levels up our energy a bit, because it takes us out of that victim mode, because an I have to is a victim all the way, right?
Right. Right. But now in the example that I used, you could still see how
Mhm.
anybody who was dealing with a client who was doing something deceitful, that their engaged energy to see the transaction through to closing on behalf of this person gets to be
Mm,
a challenge. And so therefore their performance or their energy could be slapped down. Now the reframe that you just mentioned would be to bring your energy back up to doing what's right. And
right,
then, but it still, it's that little shift of like, pull back. Okay, wait a minute, what am I doing? Recognize that, and then shift themselves back to, it's not only my values, it's the right thing to do according to the law. And but in the meantime, you were working so hard to satisfy this client, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I have to to shift my energy to what is the best way and my engaged energy to be doing the right thing.
so
So
what I'm hearing, I just want to pause you for a
yeah, no,
second.
no, no, please do.
What I'm hearing is that you now pulled in one of your earlier statements, around human beings being observers of our thoughts, behavior, speeches, responsibilities, responses, things like that. So what I'm hearing is when I'm feeling like my have to is pulling my energy down, that's an opportunity to go into my observer, which then that's like the connecting point between I have to, observer, and then over to I choose. So it's kind of like the pathway to moving out of those lower energy and back into my engaged energy as best as I can, because I can see where if you're in a circumstance with a client that you have a contract with, and they've just they've the choices that they made pulled the situation out of integrity, that's going to bring your energy down. You may never get all the way back up to where you are when you're working with a client that's in high integrity, but you can certainly move from victim up the scale a bit more when you observe and bring in the choice. At least that's what I'm hearing from what you've shared today.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I mean about the observer, because the end goal is to have greater life satisfaction. And
Mhm.
so by making that choice to observe, why is this impacting me, sort it all through, and then bring your energy back up, is about having greater satisfaction in our lives. So, Velma, when I was preparing for this, and I mentioned to you that I started getting all those little things in the mail, and I thought of, oh, here's an example. Here's a classic example of me stepping back outside of myself as an observer, because I tend to, and one of the issues with the I shoulds, and the I have tos, this is where procrastination lives. Okay.
Mhm.
Right now, when it's an I have to, and with the example of getting my taxes done, it's I should start working on it. So I have 6 weeks of I should. And then it's like a couple of weeks of like, I really have to now, right? I really
Yeah.
have to now. And so I thought, oh my God, how can I make a shift in this, a reframe, so that I'm not going through those 6 or 8 weeks of this craziness? Because regardless, it's probably going to still impact my energy level, because it's in the
Mhm.
back of my mind. So what I decided to do was take advantage of this opportunity that I knew I was going to be here talking to you about it. And in the DISC thing, the personality
Right.
assessment, I am an I. I like things to be fun. I like them to be social. And so I said, I know what I'll do. I will challenge myself to get it done the earliest I have ever done in my life. And that I'm sharing that with you. So the other day, yes, one of the little things came in the mail. I went right over to my scanner, uploaded it into a file, and I have just decided that I'm going to turn this into a game and
Mm.
surprise myself of getting it done the fastest I have ever done. And, you know, I, hopefully I can do it next year, but I'm actually like set it up for a challenge. So sometimes these have tos, and we know we have to do it eventually, you know, maybe try to make it fun, at least in the I category of the DISC assessments.
Yes.
Although there are some of those personalities that this wouldn't be an issue at all, but for me, it's just no fun.
Well, and I totally get that. So what I heard is I went from I should, or you went from I should to I have to I choose to gamify this.
Yes. Yes. And now I'm like, oh, on a roll. When's the next document coming in the mail? And so, yes, but I had to gamify it. And, whatever it takes to be able to get yourself engaged. And,
I
you
really,
know,
I really
could I
like.
gamify if it was I needed another root canal? Like, maybe
Oh, how
not,
do you
right?
gamify
There's thing, but I
that?
can gamify this. I even found myself thinking gamify, like the IRS should have a lottery that whoever files their taxes the first week of the season that it could be done, that you were
That
automatically entered into a lottery, how many more people would get out of that procrastination zone and low engagement?
that is actually a really brilliant idea.
Yes, yes.
Somebody should send this video to the government.
Yeah. No, 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 don't send them anything with me.
Okay,
Thanks,
maybe just
Alma.
a clip.
But really, I took something and I was able to take something that I just really don't like doing and kind of made it fun. Now that's my example and a unique example,
Mhm.
but really and truthfully, if we can step back, notice what kind of problems are we causing ourselves? Now, for instance, and I have to, when it finally, like, even if it were like 6 weeks, it doesn't have to be done. And I procrastinated, or anybody procrastinated. And then all of a sudden, something else comes up that would have been a fabulous opportunity. But now they have to do the have to project.
Mhm.
Like, oh my goodness. Then the resentment, and that level of resentment, that is catabolic energy. That is what causes a lot of stress, and it does cause disease. So it's more than just handling when are we procrastinating. It's looking at what is this about this. Now, not every bit of procrastination is going to be like just around I don't like doing it, and
Mhm.
that I choose to put it off as long as possible. But very often we know that level of energy engagement is that somebody doesn't know what to do next,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. But that's still an opportunity to observe, right?
Yes, yes. And that's when someone like me calls Terry Levine and says, "I need you," and that's why so many of us who are coaches help get our clients through those "I have tos," "I shoulds," and reframe them so
Yes.
that they can get to "I choose to."
Yes. And I think that's really, it's an important distinction that you're sharing there, is that um sometimes the I choose to is reaching out for support.
Yes,
If
yes.
if your I have to, I should, or I won't are holding you back, what kind of support network do you have in place in order to lift you out of those energy drains, right? You know, it's kind of like uh it's almost like I've got a short circuit. I remember I had one car. This is like 1,000 years ago. I had one car that I
Mhm.
literally had to unhook the battery in order for me to hook it back up the next morning to start it up, because if I didn't, it would be dead, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm seeing with all of this is I won't, I have to, I should. It's kind of like me leaving that battery connected all night, and it just drains my battery. And then the I chooses, whether it's I choose to in actions, specific actions inside of my business, or I choose to reach out for support, is kind of like I'm disengaging from these battery drains in order that I can re-engage a proper energy.
Absolutely. I love how you equated that to that battery drain, because that's exactly what, several weeks of for anybody and I should is doing. It is just drawing some of that energy, and then especially if it's I have to anyway. Um if you have to anyway, like, take make that period
Yep.
smaller instead of
Well,
elongating it, you know?
and how can you bring choice into your I have to in order to support yourself, in order to start lifting your energy again? Like, it may be true that that does require to be done. It's a
Mhm.
requirement, but even just changing it from I'm required to do this instead of I have to do this, right? If you could change
Yes.
it to where I'm required to do this, and how can I do this? That brings choice into it. Then it actually does shift the energy around it, even just a little bit. And sometimes that little bit is exactly what you need to get over that hump.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But yes, the goal is to get to living in the moment at choice with engaged energy, and there's your greater life satisfaction. You put it in a nutshell. I love that I will use that, Velma.
Absolutely.
I will use that Velma story about her battery with the electrical drain, drawing off that battery. That
I have
is,
I have lots of Velma isms.
yeah. I have a lot of Denise isms too.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
we are at the end of our time, and I want to make sure that that our listeners have an opportunity to be able to connect with you. I want to hear, tell me a little bit about your real estate sales alliance. And what I'm also hearing in this is that yes, you do support real estate agents. And if somebody has a question for you about your um, energy, engaged energy, that they can reach out to you. I want them to be able to know how to reach out to you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I have a mastermind group for women real estate agents, and it is called the Real Estate Sales Success Alliance. And very, very soon, my sales page for that will be available. But I do have the information already put together. So if somebody wants information for that, they can add a comment under this post or direct message me. I am a member of this group, so you would be able to find me here. But in addition to that, I am a master practitioner for what is called the Energy Leadership Index, and that is an attitudinal assessment. Now, my coach training was through the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching, and that is a proprietary type assessment through that institute. But on my website, which is indigocreativecoaching.com, there is a page where you can get more information about what that assessment is all about,
Mhm.
and you could opt in and sign up to have an assessment for that to be done. And what that does, it's a series of 70 questions, and it's regarding all sorts of um, questions regarding things about life. It's not just for entrepreneurs, but it will help gauge your energy level. And when the assessment comes to me, I actually spend about 3 hours evaluating it, gathering the information together. And then we would have a 2 hour breakthrough session where we would go over your assessment. It would show me what your engaged energy level would be when you're not under stress, and then what your energy level is while you are under stress. And it would help us in directing what areas of your life are you experiencing these energy pulls. So it's
Mm.
very much an in-depth assessment. The clients I have who've had it done just rave about it. You are guaranteed you will have a breakthrough.
Brilliant. Okay. So if you're interested in her mastermind, you can put Success Alliance in the comments.
Yes.
If you want to hear about her energy leadership index, maybe put ELI
It is ELI, yes.
in there.
But if I said
Um,
ELI, no one would know what I was talking about, but it is ELI.
So yeah, put those in the comments. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. Just make sure you tag Denise in there so that she knows that you have a specific question for her. And Denise, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I definitely see how important it is for us to be engaging our energy instead of letting it leak out like the battery. Uh,
Yes.
and thank you so much for your time. This was brilliant.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation too, and I love being part of this entrepreneur group.
Me too. You have a brilliant day. And thank you to those of you who are listening today and those of you who are going to be listening in the future. We appreciate you. Don't hesitate to come over to Entrepreneurs with Terry Levine on Facebook and start hanging out with us. Have a great day.
Yes.